senator, no?
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
Green light to talk because of this report. Everybody now has the green light to talk about this seriously, and that's I think why I've had like kind of butterflies all day, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what's in the report, because it's such a historic day that this is even happening in the first place.
that I've got goosebumps hearing that. Let's read it one more time, because just to let people let it sink in. That is a really heavy statement by a U.S. senator that basically has said our pilots and our service men and women have been ridiculed and ignored for years on this topic. Can we read that one more time?
Pulling that back up, rather.
Yeah, that's a real strong indictment too. When it comes to crafting statements like this, for senators, so you're very careful, very intentional about the words you use. That's like, that's the equivalent of a law school like smack in the face. You know, when it comes to lawyer talk, that's what these statements are. That's throwing it back into the face of the military a little bit, which is bold of Senator Rubio. The other thing I wanted to mention about this statement is basically this is Marco saying we're going to have a hearing on this. Yeah, this is the first step, or we're doing more.
Yeah. Dude, oh my goodness!
Here we go.
And guys, it up. Listen to what Alec is saying. Okay, Alec is the head journalist of the UFO. How would you describe it? It's not. It's really your own department. You're the guy who's taking it up. Chief UFO correspondent. This guy. But beyond that, Alec is an insane. He covers politics all day. He listens and he sits into briefings and congressional hearings all day. So this guy really knows what he's talking about when it comes to the political aspect of this, and so does Jamarl Thomas. Actually, you know what? Before you read it, Jane, Jane, read it one more time, and then I want to hear what Jamarl has to say, because I know he's going to say something awesome.
Shoot, I lost it. Oh, there it is. There it is. You brought it up. So for years, the men and women we trust to defend our country reported encounters with unidentified aircraft that had superior capabilities, and for years their concerns were often ignored and ridiculed. This report is an important first step in cataloging these incidents, but it is just a first step. The Defense Department and intelligence community have a lot of work to do before we can actually understand whether these aerial threats present a serious national security concern.
Jamarl?
Are we going to be sure that this is a threat now?
I don't think Marco Rubio would have ever talked about this outside the context of a threat. It was going through defense. It seemed to always to be going through defense. I mean, even when you're thinking of the Navy is the one that changed the protocols. It was the Army that started working with to the Stars Academy. It was that specific institution in the political space that kind of gave this thing some legitimacy in regards to, okay, this is a real issue that you guys can focus on and talk about. So there's that part. It's strange, right? I mean, it's surreal in some way that these guys are actually talking about this like this. And it boils down to now, all right, now what's next? Now, my argument was always that the report, regardless of what was in the report, was never going to give you anything outside of this kind of doubt of just saying, we don't think it's us, or we know it's not us, meaning it's not our tech. It could be China, it could be Russia. We're not saying it's aliens. We're taking that off the table, but we're never really taking that off the table. And it's like, so wait a minute. You basically have just told us nothing. So you have to have something else. Like, there was no way the report was ever going to be the end all be all, because the report was never going to give you anything outside of we don't know what it is, which is unsatisfying the moment that you legitimize the issue, which is the confirmation. Grant Cameron was very clear years ago that what was taking place was confirmation. And that gives this kind of a legitimacy to the idea that this stuff is being choreographed in some way. I don't believe for one moment that these guys don't necessarily know whether or not it's us. At the very least, you should be able to delineate whether something is your technology or whether something's not your technology. And whether or not something where China, who would not have had that technology going back in the 80s or 90s, it would be weird if they did. And from the standpoint of the Soviet Union, who also had the same issues with UFOs, apparently, because again, Yeltsin was giving up the info and giving up the data. I think people should read Elizondo's statement on this when he's talking to the press. And he's saying, basically, this is not the Russians and the Chinese. He's very clear about that. Now, people could say Elizondo is lying. That would be a weird thing for Elizondo to be doing in this particular situation. And you have a lot of people who are staking their reputations, political and otherwise, on this. And so the idea for the report can never backstop Ratcliffe. It can never backstop Elizondo. I mean, you can't back away from the people who are basically instrumental on some level in influencing the perspective of the people who are doing this stuff, this job. By the same token, no, they were never going to give you aliens. By the same token, they can't take it off the table, which means there's further investigation. It's very strange in this slow walk into bringing the public into awareness. And that's what it seems to be taking place. I would say this. I love Grant Cameron, love the guy. And I've spoken to Grant Cameron in multiple interviews, maybe 4 or 5 interviews. I would not like to mystify this issue. And the consciousness aspect may be part of it, yes. And I may even agree with Bigelow that, yes. But from the standpoint of the way the public is engaging this, right now, the public is like, what's out there? And there's a there. And it seems, it's the very least in regards to the way we're talking about this stuff, that they're objects, not interdimensional fish. And I get that there are like philosophical consequences in these kind of larger issues. And I grapple with that stuff. But I got to be honest, I'm more directly concerned with the reality of it, if that makes sense. Meaning, right now, the only information source we have is government. And government is not a political or is not an information source that needs to be wed to the truth. It typically gives a purview. This is our point of view. And right now you have intel and you have government giving information to the public saying, okay, here it is. And it's this weird release. I mean, the Pentagon could have killed the story the moment that the videos were released by saying those things are fakes. They didn't do that. They let that story go. They put a knife in Elizondo, despite the fact that, like, it's just very strange in the way that they've been engaging this. I realized, though, that I was listening to Dan Sheehan, and I realized in regards to the fight over whether or not these guys should be believed, whether or not these guys are being honest, how far they're being in regards to their honesty, that the problem with this is there's no science. But if you think about this, science as an institution is missing from this conversation. Like, these guys have basically said there's no there, and because they've said there's no there, they have lost the thread in regards to talking and thinking about this. So there's no, let's say, universities coming together saying, you know what, we see all of this information is voluminous. There's no way. Our hypothesis needs to change. Our hypothesis needs to be that, hey, maybe there's something there. And right. Even if we don't think it's aliens, at the very least admit that there's a there. Because everybody else has agreed that there's a there. Science, head in the sand. They're missing. And so you have this kind of space being filled with, okay, should we believe these guys? That's very weird to be in. And I hate that spot because we're in the dark. So right. I was picking on Neil deGrasse Tyson, but it's not just him. It's this idea that these guys, universities and everybody else, you have all of these people who are galvanized on this one specific issue. And right now is a moment of truth, almost like back in the NASA days where there's like, oh my God, we're going to go into space. And science, instead of being in the forefront saying, you know what, we're not saying there's aliens, but yeah, there's something there. And we should investigate to figure out what it is. It may be our own secret tech. It may be interdimensional fish, but we're going to figure it out. And we're curious about it enough to figure it out. And Neil deGrasse Tyson goes out running and say, we're going to petition the government for more information. And we're going to set up our universities. And we're going to set up our studies. And the world is going to watch. You can do that. Right. But science has betrayed and has abdicated its responsibility to basically be the forefront and explain our reality. And that's basically, I think, the vacuum. I just hate this notion of just being radically in the dark and being entirely dependent upon, okay, here's information that these guys are leaking and releasing. And here's one that may be perfectly okay. And it's like, okay, well, why are they doing this now? And what's the reason for them doing this? And is the information correct? And I hate that. Yeah. Yes, I like that the report is in the release. And yes, it feels momentous. So don't misunderstand me. I don't want to be overly cynical. I guess I'm thinking about the real world implications of, like, what does this look like in practice as this stuff go forward? And then anything that happens now in regards to the public has larger ramifications because that stuff is going to echo through time in regards to the way they deal with it. And one last point before, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to filibuster. Science is screwed up.
Filibuster is your
great. No,
filibuster is your middle name, Jamarl. That's why we have you here to filibust, baby.
Like,
well, I guess
ramped up right now.
Well, science is screwed up because our institutions, media is supposed to be this kind of fourth estate that keeps government accountable. They often fail at that task, but that's supposed to be their job. Science, I know if I fall off of a cliff, I'm going to fall at 9.8 meters per second squared because science told me so. They explain these things and all of these laws and rules, and they can show these things in these big, powerful devices and everything else, and they tell us reality. But in this specific case, they basically said there's no there, but there is a there.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean for the last 40 or 50 years where these guys have basically told us something that is false?
Real quick, Jamarl, I think you might have an echo on your side.
Is that me? I'm sorry.
I think so. But okay. Jane, you had what were you going to say earlier?
Oh, no, I was just getting super pumped up. I didn't even mean to interrupt. That's how I've been really feeling lately. Is I'm just fed up with the secrecy. I feel like it's the original sin of a small group of people thinking they know what's best, and you lie one time and then you have to lie to cover up that lie and then what you've done is you stopped scientists who are going to college trying to learn the truth from progressing because you've told them that there's no evidence for aliens, and so their whole idea of the cosmos is so limited. And this whole idea, like, we have these cards, this unclassified or this classified report, right? And we're still going to look at them, but we're just going to pick out which cards to show you. It feels very much like you're playing poker with somebody who you can't win with, a magician that's just trying to, what are they Yeah. But yeah, you got me pumped up.
Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I just wanted to say quickly, because I thought Jamarl brought up a great point, and so did UFO Jane. And I think this idea that we have scientists who still scoff at this and who are unwilling to even stop smiling and laughing long enough to look at it seriously, that's a huge problem. Today on NPR, somebody from the SETI program was laughing about the 180-day UFO report. This is the problem with mainstream academia right now as it's stands. And when we had Avi Loeb on the Singularity Lab on Tuesday, he said he is willing to look at this topic. He is willing to lead studies. And so the only thing that's going to legitimize this, and I hate to say it, is this report. Because this report coming out of the government, if it says what we think it's going to say, is going to say, look, we don't know what it is. We still need to gather more data. If we can land there, then we can start to really coalesce the folks who are open-minded in mainstream academia so that we can push the data forward. And I think that's where this all has to go.
Real quick, if you could do me a favor, just go ahead and just send everyone in the chat, because we got almost 1,000 people in this room right now, which is insane. So thank you all for being here. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, like the channel, share, because the more people in here, the better. It's an all-inclusive community. So welcome to the Unidentified.
You guys are disclosure.
Yeah, you guys are disclosure. That's a great statement, Jane. I love it. But yeah, if you can just share Marco Rubio's statement with everyone in the chat. We're talking right now. We read it live twice, Marco Rubio's statements, essentially saying that, our pilots and our military personnel have been ignored and ridiculed on this topic for years, and that this report hopefully is the turning of the tide. And so here we are. So Michael, if you can, real quick, let's reset the room for everybody, so everybody knows who's talking and what's going on. And then I want to swing it over to Kent Bai and get his thoughts on what Rubio said.
Beautiful. So thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the Unidentified Celebrity Review. If you're not subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe. Click the link, click the like button, and share this. We're trying to get this message out to as many people as possible and do whatever we can do on our side to get the government talking. So first of all, if you didn't know, we've got Alex Sears with us today. Wave, Alex. He's the chief UFO correspondent at the Daily Caller and has researched UAPs for several years. Alec is experienced in the political realm and is very familiar with the inner workings of Washington, D.C. We've also got UFO Jane, who has documented over 1,000 UFO cases over the years and interviews UFO experts and others for the YouTube show, The Weird UFO Show. Welcome, Jane. Jamarl Thomas is a political analyst and host of Fault Lines on Radio Sputnik in Washington, D.C., 105.5, and the YouTube channel by the same name. And last but not least is Kent Bai. Since 2014, has been conducting over 1,200 Voices of VR podcast interviews featuring the pioneering artists, storytellers, and technologists driving the resurgence of virtual and augmented reality. He's been following this UAP topic for a while, and he's got an epic Twitter thread, which is in the description below. My name is Michael Mataluni. I am the co-host here at the Unidentified Celebrity Review. And so for those of you who don't know, we go live 5 nights a week, 3 nights here on UCR at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and 2 nights at the Singularity Lab. If you want to follow us over at the Singularity Lab as well, we're almost to 1,000 subscribers, so you guys can push us over the top right this very second. Just click the link in the description and follow the Singularity Lab.
Yeah, if every single one of you in this show right now, which is 1,044, we just went over 1,000, went over to Singularity Lab and just hit subscribe, you'll get this show 5 days a week. So thank you. 5 days
a week.
This is like a record, I think, for us. Other than the Big Phone Home,
the Big Phone Home, I think we had more, but yeah, this is the most people we've ever had on a single live stream, other than Big Phone Home.
Welcome. Like I said, subscribe, like, share. If you want to help support the show, because it is supported by people like you, by supporters like you. We very much are a public access channel. That's the way we treat it. That's the way we advertise it. So welcome. So let's go to Kent Bai. Kent, what did you think about Marco Rubio's statement on his website?
Yeah, there's a number of points here. I think the thing that I was talking about, the paradigm and the paradigm shift, he's saying that people have been ignored and ridiculed. And I think that's when that's before you have the model drift, or you have anomalous information and it's rejected in the Kuhnian sort of paradigm shift model. And then once you have enough of that critical mass of that evidence, then you have the model drift, meaning that our existing models are not encompassing and explaining what we have. And I think that's what Rubio is saying, is that they're having encounters with unidentified aircraft that had superior capabilities. Now, he's saying that they have superior capabilities, which means that there's all sorts of additional information that is made available for him to make that assertion. And I want to sort of contrast that to something that Mick West told a New York Times reporter today. I call Mick West a debunker, because that's essentially what he is. He's not a skeptic. He's just a debunker who believes in the null hypothesis without really keeping an open mind. But anyway, Mick West says that there's mundane explanations that exist for all these UAP videos, which I think is categorically false. I think the problem with people like Mick West is that he has a lack of epistemic humility, meaning he is declaring that he knows that there's these explanations, that it's reached a certain level, when in reality, he's not a scientist, he's not a subject matter expert, and these explanations he's calling are actually unverified hypotheses that are coming from a single source reporting. He's only looking at these videos. He doesn't have all this other associated data. And so someone like Mick West, I think, has unfairly been sort of lifted up in the media as this sort of expert, as somebody who is authoritatively debunking all these things, when he's really not. He's just sort of putting out as much of a conspiracy theory of anybody else, that he's saying that this is what he thinks it is. So just because he's confident in those explanations doesn't mean he's actually putting forth knowledge. It's good to have skepticism, but I think, sometimes you have these situations where people just automatically kind of make a decision as to, like, this is not real, and then they do everything they can to sort of wrap up a narrative around that, whether it's like, this is all coming from the media, this is all coming from, these infighting between these different military organizations. You listen to these skeptics and they sort of have to, grasp at straws in order to really describe some of this stuff. So when someone like Marco Rubio is saying that, essentially these are encounters with unidentified aircraft that had superior capabilities. He's saying that they have additional information that hasn't yet been made available. I think one of the fair criticisms that you hear from the skeptical community is that none of this data are available for independent verification. So until there's an ability for the wider scientific community to maybe have access to this information that's protected by, the classified sources and methods that the capabilities of these radar have, there's a whole bunch of data that is privileged information that we don't have access to. And there's people like Eric Weinstein, who is probably would self-identify as a skeptic, and he's got tipped off by a number of people within his community, and he's also in touch with the theoretical physics community. And there is a lack of communication when it comes to some of the people that are leaning in a lot of these theoretical physics communities. So there's this disconnect. And this is what Hal Puthoff has talked about, how there's this like stovepiping of like any information that is there, it's sort of in these special access programs that are unacknowledged, they're waived, they're top secret, special compartmentalized information, and there's ways in which that they kind of split it up, and there's not everybody that does have the information available all talking to each other. So the secrecy, I think, runs deep. And Bill Sweetwater wrote an article in Jane's Defense Weekly that sort of unpacks the sort of secrecy structure that talks about these unacknowledged special access programs. And when you listen to people like Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis, they talk about how that a lot of this data that are available, even when they have access to it, it's still kind of stovepiped, and it doesn't have like this open collaboration for all this. And so I think what Rubio is saying is that, there's at least enough information that's being shown here. We don't have access to it yet, so we still don't know.
Well, actually, maybe we do. We just got the report. It just dropped.
Nice.
It's 9 pages long. I've got Jamarl Thomas is reading it. I'm sure Alec is reading it. Rather's reading it. Real quick before we get to it, we've got a $500 Norwegian krone, or 500 count Norwegian krone. I think it's like a $60 donation. So thank you so damn much, Axel Christopher Solvang. Thank you. Today's a small step for UFO Twitter, but a huge step for humanity. Today marks the start of the process of transforming mankind. Big statement, but a true and realistic hope. Thank you. No, that's I'm with you. I'm right there with you. I'm sure a lot of folks in the chat share your sentiment as well. And then I think there was also another, a $5 donation here, or $5 euro donation. I sent Michael and Luis the link for the report. Thank you so much. We got it. And actually, Rather's got it pulled up. So we've got almost 9. I think the last page is a table of context. It doesn't really count. Rather, let's get Rather in here. I can see his face. So Rather, what's your early take on this report right now?
So it's an interesting report. So, the initial reports were talking about there's going to be 120 incidences. It looks like they studied 120. They kind of bucketed them into 5 different categories. Those categories are, let me see if I can find it right here. Unidentified. Well, I'll say that in a little bit. But there's 21 things that were categorized as in the other category, which were these actual kind of like Nimitz type things for unexplained events. Most of these happened in the last 2 years, the report said, when we had better reporting and better data collection mechanisms. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where a lot of these focused. We don't get any information about the specific incidents, which is kind of disappointing. Like the whole videos and stuff that Jeremy Corbell released, it's unclear if those were actually bucketed into this other category or if they were maybe were in one of these other categories.
Okay, Alex, here's any early thoughts on what's going on here?
I have one early thought on page 5 of the report. I think I'm on like 7 or so reading through it. Haven't gotten all the way through, but one thing jumped out at me.
Can you blow that up, brother?
Big. So page 9, subheading is a handful of UAP appear to demonstrate advanced technology, and they reference 18 specific incidents. Where observers report unusual UAP movement patterns or flight characteristics. And the paragraph under that, when they're describing, they move against the wind, they maneuver abruptly or move at considerable speed, this sentence really jumped out at me. In a small number of cases, military aircraft systems processed radio frequency energy associated with UAP sightings.
Interesting. Radio frequency energy.
Not necessarily radio frequency itself, but radio frequency energy, which would be parallel or similar to radio frequency. But the fact that at least 18 incidents specifically of things that we can't explain.
Right. Out of the 120 they said, or 200?
Yes.
It sounded like it was a subset of the 18 that displayed this RF signature from my reading.
It does say in a small number of cases. I don't necessarily know what that might mean. But I did think I believe that would be some new information. And then that kind of jumped out at me as maybe a way to like a tag, something has like a friend or foe tag that
you could even read more exciting possibility into that sentence and maybe that's what they're using as propulsion. That would kind of fall in line with the whole, Alcubierre drive type theories.
An RF signature, you think?
Well, I mean, RF signature is, electromagnetic waves, right? So if it's generating its own, RF, electromagnetic waves, it's, manipulating the, something. There's not enough information, obviously, for us to, tell one way or the other, but I think that is a very interesting line as well.
Well, could it also just be that, and I don't want to piss on this parade, but could it also just be that that's how that's communicating with whatever it's sending a signal back to?
Exactly. Yeah, that would be the most prosaic. That'd probably be mixed West answer, is that it's just a remote control. But if it was something as simple as that, you would think that they'd be able to tell us that, maybe.
Well, someone was asking in the chat real quick, is there any new video or pictures? And the answer to that is no.
That's obviously in the classified. They must have classified every single specific case. There's no specific cases. They say there were 11 incidents where there were near misses with UAP and pilots, but we don't have any details about any of them. I think this is really interesting. So, although this is a quote from it, there was a wide variability in the reports and the data set is currently too limited to blah, 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 blah. But this is to the patterns of UAPs. There was some clustering of UAP observations regarding shape, size, and particularly propulsion. UAP sightings also tended to cluster around U.S. training and testing grounds, but we assess that this may be result from a collection bias, right, if you're looking for them. They're definitely saying that these are other category. So just like what Jamar was saying, we're now accepting that there's another there.
Right, there's another there, as he likes to say.
Man, I wanted a photo. I wanted a video, though. I thought we'd get...
No, I mean, I knew we wouldn't get that. I mean, Lou Elizondo set that expectation from the start, and... What are you gonna say, Mike?
I was just gonna say, can you pull the report back up? Because I wanted to go back to page 2, I believe, or no, sorry, page 3. It's very interesting how they've classified these. And if you just go to, let's see, in a limited number of cases, no, sorry, my apologies. Maybe it was on page 2. They said they bucketed them into 5 different possibilities, and I've now lost the freaking.
Here we go.
Can you find where the 5 are?
Yep, I got it pulled up on the screen here.
Yeah, can you read that?
Yeah, so there's airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomena,
I got it.
USG or industry developmental programs, foreign adversarial systems, or other.
Let's go through other.
Interesting one.
Yeah, although most of the UAP described in our data set probably remain unidentified due to limited data or challenges to collecting processes or analysis, we may require additional scientific knowledge to successfully collect on, analyze, and characterize some of them. We would group such objects in this category pending scientific advances that allowed us to better understand them. The UAPTF intends to focus additional analysis on the small number of cases where a UAP appeared to display unusual flight characteristics or signature management. This is what we always talk about when we talk about the diamond in the rough. And this is where we really need to be looking. And the fact that they're asking for additional scientific study and analysis is the most important thing.
Yes, agreed.
And so I think, some of the congressmen who read this report kind of came off and threw some water on it. And I think maybe part of that would be they have this line in it early on addressing that other category, saying that these observations could be the result of sensor error, spoofing, or observer misinterpretation and require additional rigorous analysis, which I'm sure is true, but and that might be why congressmen are kind of saying, this isn't definitely not confirming that these are aliens, but we need more data, as we like to say.
Sorry, I found something in here that I think, how everybody's like, oh, could this be China or could this be Russia? Here's something where I think they're saying, no, it's not. We currently lack data to indicate any UAP are part of a foreign collection program or indicative of a major technological advancement by a potential adversary. We continue to monitor for evidence of such programs, given their, the challenge. But I think that is pretty key because up until now, it's like, oh, maybe it's China, maybe it's Russia. They're saying, no, we don't think it's China. We don't think.
Well, they're not saying it's no. They just say they lack data. So there's a difference between not believing and suspending judgment. So just because they're suspending judgment doesn't mean that they've eliminated that as a possibility. They're just saying that they lack data.
Aren't they saying that they do not believe this is a foreign anything in the other bucket? They do not believe is a foreign adversarial threat. Is that what they're saying?
I think they're saying that it's not in. They don't. Their best guess is it's not China. Like they don't have any evidence to conclude that right now. So yes, you're right. It could be China or Russia, but I think they probably spent a lot of time writing that sentence. And
I think the thing that needs to be clear is that it is China and Russia. A part of this is 100% China and Russia. Right. And so that for sure is part of this discussion, but we're talking about the diamonds in the rough, right? Like that's specifically what we're talking about. And those, from what they can tell, and at least what I'm gathering here, is that those are not China, Russia, Antarctica, Italy, or any other foreign power.
That's what the report says, yes.
Yeah, and to quote Donald Rumsfeld, there's those known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. This is a true unknown unknown, it sounds like.
One thing at the end that I think is worth pointing out is that I know that Lou Elizondo has talked about how the UAP task force is not really a permanent entity. It's just kind of like, it's had this remit to make this as a report, but it's not necessarily a permanent office, or, like Elizondo has always said that hopefully this is kind of like an interim report, but there will be more to come, but that this will be the first step. And so they're saying that they've indicated that they want additional funding for research and development at the very end on page 7 at the bottom, that could further the future study of topics laid out in this report. So those investments should be guided by a UAP collection strategy, a UAP R&D technical roadmap, and a UAP program plan. So all those, I think, are like say, hey, we need more money, that if we really want to dig into this, we need a little bit more infrastructure. Because I know that folks like Nalin and Elizondo have said that, this has really been kind of a part-time thing for a couple of people to put these reports together without like full funding. So it's really been understaffed and underfunded, and hopefully this report will at least, catalyze more resources to be put forth to this effort to maybe have a little bit more permanent, of an entity that's continuing to investigate this.
I'm sorry, Michael, real quick. I just want to say, I'm going to put you backstage because I want you to read the report again. We just got Jamarl back, so I want to get his take on it because I know that's exactly what he did. He stepped out and just read it. He probably read it twice if I had to take a guess. But I want you to read it again, just in case I want to make sure we go through with a fine-tooth comb, and you're the great man to do that. So we'll put you backstage, and then let's get Jamarl up here. Sir, what are you coming away from? First of all, I'm gonna say right now, I am not disappointed in this report.
Neither am I.
I am not disappointed in this report. I love this report.
Man, I love this report.
I actually, and thank God I set my expectations as low as possible. I knew I wasn't going to get video. I knew I wasn't going to get any new pictures. But hold on. Also, we got to realize we got a lot of time for leaks to happen.
This report is great.
Let's hear it, Jamarl. Let's hear it, Jamarl. Go for it, baby. The floor is yours.
As I read the first page, right, and I was like, all right, not bad. And I kept reading, and I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. I mean, all the articles that were coming out talking about the report were saying how horrible things were going to be and how it was just going to dash away this notion of UFOs. Nonsense. This report doesn't do any of that. In fact, the report is almost apologetic and says, look, we don't have resources. We don't know. The report is basically, there are things in our space. We have no idea what those things are. And in fact, I was even writing down quotes for these. Listen to some of these quotes. Most of the UAPs reported probably do represent physical objects, given that the majority of UAPs were registered across multiple sensors to include radar, infrared, electro-optical data, weapons, seekers, and visual observation. All right. We're not talking about interdimensional fish. These are real things. All right. So we've, at the very least, solidified. We're talking about real items. The UAP clearly poses a safety of flight issue and may pose a challenge to U.S. national security. Safety concerns primarily center on aviation's contending with an increasingly cluster air domain. UAPs will also represent a national security challenge if they are foreign adversary collection platforms or provide evidence of a potential adversary has developed either a breakthrough or disruptive technology. So they are at the very, meaning if there was nothing there that they consider to be advanced, that line is not there. It's not there. And if all of that data and everything that they're talking about, again, was not picking up things that was real, that was not picking up things that was in flight path, and in some cases, meaning you could get rid of a lot of these cases, right? Just from obvious, human, probability. But it's the stick-to-it cases, the ones that you can't get rid of. That's the part. And the report basically says, look, there are a lot of these things, we have no idea what they are. Some of these things are doing things that do seem to be advanced technology. And because it seems to be advanced technology, we require more money, more resources in order to study and figure out what it is. This report, all the way through, this report establishes there's something that's there. A, there's something that could pose a threat to national security. B, there's something that could represent technology and does represent technology because of the things that they were doing. However, we don't know if they're China, Russia, or aliens, because we don't have enough resources and we have limited amount of ability to study this. When I was screaming at scientists in Neil deGrasse Tyson, this is kind of my point, right? These guys are basically saying, and I asked Professor Avi this, as scientists, how do you study something that you can't replicate? Meaning if science provides or needs reproducibility, I need to be able to put this in a lab and see something over and over and over. Okay. You don't.
Well, not
you can't
necessarily.
Do that
with this. Not necessarily.
Well,
what about earthquakes?
No,
earthquakes are unpredictable, 100%. But we still study them. We still put the resources there.
I'm not saying. I guess I'm not saying that's an impossibility. I'm putting the challenge to him, saying, how do you do it? That's what I'm asking.
Right. Well, and just so because there's that question of how you do it, I mean you shouldn't. I'm backing you up here is what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. It's the how you do it part. And so he's explaining like how you set up experimentation, how you establish whether or not it's us versus something. Those are things that we can do. And those are things that scientists should be leading the forefront on. And basically, the report is basically saying we don't have enough resources, staff to do this credibly. However, it should be done. If you notice,
Jamarl, can I ask you a quick
question? Pretty strong on this notion that this needs to be investigated.
Can I ask you a quick question, Jamarl?
Go for it.
What do you think about the people who will then say that the government and this entire process has been about getting more funding for the military?
Well, look, any process it's always a leaky bucket. Meaning whatever the original intent and everything else is behind it, the information is coming out. And whatever it was going to be from the standpoint of releasing information about UFOs, especially if it was coming out of the government, that was always going to be a part of it. Oh man, how do you extricate yourself from this information without this notion of, hey, there's something in our skies. This is a national security issue. National security tends to be connected with money. Okay, we're going to need resources in order to deal with the thing that's in our skies. Right? Even in the report, what is the report saying? We need more resources to study this very specific issue because, of course, you do need more resources to study the issue. I'm saying those two things are secondary to whether or not you want the information to come out, whether the information is correct or not. You're never going to get a clean win. You're never going to get a clean win. At least that's my framing of it.
I would think, Jamarl, just to answer that question, Michael, it's preposterous. It's how much could you possibly get out of a report like this? Like how much? What kind of budget are you going to get from a report like this? Like,
I think end result. I think they're saying end result.
No, I see what you're saying, but what I mean is like it's the military just got its largest military approval for the budget. It's been the largest budget increase in the U.S. history. And that just happened. So they don't need to make this report to get a budget. I think if they're asking for a budget, it's something in the same realm or range of the ATIP. Like, hey, let's do ATIP, but maybe quadruple the budget, which would still be under $100 million. I mean, that's nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing.
Like this is something else. And I don't know what the something else is. I mean, because they will increase the budget on a whim.
Right.
I mean, if you think about it, they didn't even, complain about it. They just say, okay, we're going to increase it. In fact, they were wanting to give more than what Trump wanted when he was in office to the military. So I don't know if you need to. Yeah, I think I agree with you on that part, Lou. I mean, the thing becomes, though, that these programs will need to be funded because when they have these look, this report basically is saying there's a lot of stuff in our skies and we have no idea what they are. There's not enough resources going into investigating what they are, and we should be investigating what they are. That's what that report does.
Right.
That's astonishing.
Yeah.
That's like, they downplayed this report. But the fact of the matter is, this report is basically screaming. It's a primal scream for more resources into something that we don't know what is in our airspace. And by the way, technology. Not interdimensional fish, technology, and saying it could belong to Russia and China, maybe. We don't know.
Yeah.
But we need to figure it out.
Well, remember there was a category for foreign adversaries, but then there was another category for other. So they are separating out UAPs that they basically don't think have probably that explanation. So I think that's really key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to give a huge shout out to not only Lou Elizondo and Cahill and Knapp and Corbell and all of these guys who've been devoting all of this time to this story. You guys are all validated today, but thank God they downplayed this. Thank God.
Yes.
Because if they were saying aliens, bodies, metamaterials, photos, videos, and then we got this, we would have been so pissed
Well, that's what
off.
I've been telling all my followers.
We would have been so pissed. And thank God they actually, like, this is what gives me confidence in the story that they're giving us. They're not overhyping it. They're not overselling it. It does, even if they are trying to get a budget, it's under $100 million budget. Yeah, but I mean, I'm saying a budget that it's nothing. It's pennies for this complex.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So real quick, we've hit the top of the hour. We have almost 1,400 people in this live stream right now. What? Thank you guys so damn much for being here. Like, subscribe, share the channel. It's the way we grow. If you haven't done that already, we do live streams 5 days a week between Michael's channel, The Singularity Lab, and my channel here, The Unidentified Celebrity Review. We're here Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Most days from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 7 to 9 Eastern. And today, Fridays, we usually go early. So Michael, if we can, let's reset the room. Let's say hello to everybody again. The report is out. It's here. It's awesome. We're talking about it. Get hyped, baby, because the conversation is changing starting today. Like, this is a holiday, Jane. This is a holiday.
I'm seeing some comments from folks who are a little underwhelmed by the report and a little, I guess, questioning of our enthusiasm. But I want to say, look. It's been over 10 years that I've been reporting on UFOs. So, I remember when the government said UFOs weren't real. So this is a big deal. I know that there's not an up-close triangle UFO detail, but this is unprecedented, and it will put into motion a chain of events, just like that December 2017 article in the New York Times. So just, I mean, I don't...
It's a marathon, not a race. It's a marathon, not a race. It's a marathon, not a race. Yeah,
to the audience members, the cynical audience members, because I'm usually the one that's cynical in this process, right? Jane is right. There used to be like the swamp gas stuff. You guys are conspiracy theorists. I mean, it's hard to get across the level of like the weight of society on this, where you have scientists saying it's not real and studies saying it's not real and the government saying it's not real. And you're like, all of these cases, all of these people are not lying. There's documents, there's evidence. You guys are insane. And then for it to, within the last 5 years, to flip. And I think people have gotten so accustomed to the speed at which it has flipped that you've forgotten how heavy and dense that stuff was back then. Also, the report, I got to be honest, at some level is rather phenomenal. Look, you're stuck with the world that you got, meaning you are not dealing with this stuff in the standpoint of just conceptual anymore. This is physical matter reality. Whatever comes out, comes out. You're stuck with it, and however people respond. Meaning if you're the government and your job is, how do we introduce the public to an issue that we've ridiculed for 40, 50 years and that the public right now may be okay with, what does it look like when you internalize it? Right. What does it look like when science says, okay, maybe this is real? And they start thinking of different ways of the organization of the world. Is there a United States if science and engineering comes up with technology that can get you from Tokyo to California in 3 minutes? Like, what does it look like if it does say, hey, maybe there is something else out there? Are there individual states in the context of the way that we propagate ourselves? Like, I think we need to reconcile that our world on some level will fundamentally change if indeed we get what we want. And on the other side of that, who the hell knows? Now, the catch is, you would talk to Stephen Bassett. Bassett would be like, you got to hit that anyway. And I agree with Stephen Bassett that you got to hit that anyway. That doesn't make it easy, nor does it make it a gentle process of dancing between the raindrops of trying to ushering that stuff through. So you're never going to get, they're aliens screamed within a report.
Right.
What you are going to get is, we need further investigation.
And that's
now, if you remember, right now, back to the other report. The blue book was, this doesn't exist as all swamp gas. That's what this report is not that. That's momentous. Accept it for what it is on some level. And maybe I'm so cynical that I think like, wow, this is triumphant. But I'll accept that. But I do think what I just said was true. But what do you guys take on that? I mean,
I completely agree. I was continually expressing how critical it was for us to keep our expectations low, to not look at this report as something that was going to be a bombshell, and actually be prepared for nothing, Burger. And what we got was so much more than that. And again, I can't agree enough how important it is to the fact that they've got the 5 different buckets and that they've got the other bucket that requires scientific analysis. And I think that's the most important thing that we could possibly get out of this. I don't think we were ever going to get aliens. I don't think we were ever going to get interdimensional fish, as you so eloquently put, Jamarl. And so I really think that what we got today is so extraordinary and needed. For those of you just joining us, we are going over the congressional report on UAPs. It just dropped within the last hour. We've got experts here on the panel who are taking the time to dig deep into this report and bring it back and analyze it for you right here, right now. So for those of you who are joining us, thank you so much. For all 1,263 of you, we really appreciate it. For those of you who didn't know, this channel, UCR, goes live 3 days a week. And then we go live on the Singularity channel 2 days a week, discussing this topic and much more. All you got to do is click the link below to subscribe to this channel. Make sure you subscribe to the Singularity Lab as well, so you can get us 5 days a week here on YouTube. All right, so for those of you just joining us, we've got an amazing panel who's here to break down this UAPTF report with you. We've got Alex Sears on the panel. Say hello, Alex. He's the chief UFO correspondent at the Daily Caller and has researched UAPs for several years. Alec is experienced in the political realm and is very familiar with the inner workings of Washington, D.C. We've got Texas UFO researcher Jane motherfucking Kyle in the house. Has documented over 1,000 UFO cases over the years and interviews UFO experts and others for the YouTube channel, The Weird UFO Show. We've got Jamarl Thomas, a political analyst and host of Fault Lines on Radio Sputnik in Washington, D.C., 105.5 FM, and the YouTube channel by the same name. Last but not least is Kent Bai, who is a philosopher, oral historian, and experiential journalist helping to define the patterns of immersive storytelling, experiential design, and the ultimate potential of XR. Welcome, everyone. Kent, you haven't spoken in a minute. Break down what you're finding for us.
Oh, well, I'm sorry, Kent. I don't mean to cut you off. I don't mean to do that. But we got a 50 Kronig donation. I always forget the name of this, but a Danish donation. Thank you, Christian Thompson, who, by the way, was a huge help during the Big Phone Home, one of the earliest fans of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. He's got a website that is really cool. It's basically, just go check it out. I've got the link in the description. I just popped it in there. It's UAPDB.com, and it's a conglomeration of everything that's going on with UAPs. It's just a one-stop shop for all news sites.
IMDb is,
basically.
Yeah.
IMDb for UFOs, so definitely go check it out. He's just been a massive volunteer and a great help for everything that we've been doing here since the start. So thank you, Christian. MP in the house with a $50 donation. My God, dude, thank you. A huge supporter of the show, another huge supporter of the show. Thank you so much for being here, and thank all of you guys. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ken. What do you got, my friend?
All right, I've just been sort of reading through, and I have like 5 or 6 points that I want to make real quick, kind of popcorn style. So First, that's not in the report. I think that we also have to look at the Inspector General evaluation that's happening. And so there may have been larger contextual dimensions where this Inspector General report may also be driving that there's additional context and information. So that's just sort of, that's not in the report, but that's just sort of a point that maybe as time goes on to keep an eye on what may be resulting from this Inspector General report. So that's point one. The next point is that I'm hearing a little bit of feedback from somebody. They mentioned the Air Force. We haven't heard much from the Air Force. The Air Force is largely kind of theorized as maybe being a part of the UFO cover-up. And so the UAP task force is actually currently working with the Air Force and the FAA. But although the Air Force data collection has been limited historically, the USAF began a 6-month pilot program in November of 2020 to collect in the most likely areas to encounter UAP. And so, yeah, that's just, I think, a point. We haven't heard much from the Air Force, and so it's interesting to hear that now they're actually gathering data. Some popcorn style, just quick notes in terms of just little things that jumped out at me. The social cultural stigmas and sensory limitations remain obstacles in collecting data on UAP. So in other words, the taboo and the stigma still is a barrier. So I think just in terms of this report and talking about it, and Alex Dietrich, I know, has been a lot of just emphasizing that the taboo, she doesn't really want to be a part of like UFO Twitter in some ways. Right. She's just trying to like normalize this to have more people talk about it. So I think that there's still a stigma that's there that still needs to be overcome.
That was part of the report that was highlighted, correct?
Yeah, the social cultural stigmas and sensory limitations remain obstacles. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something. And that's again, we need to emphasize that. Like, I think that's a big part of this report is helping to destigmatize and detaboo this topic, so that way our men and women, service women, can report things no matter what they look like, no matter how weird they are, and there's a safe space for them to do that where they don't get stigmatized, made fun of, or demoted in worst case scenarios. But yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Right. A few more points here. And that's right. So in a small number of cases, the military aircraft systems processed radio frequency energy associated with UAP sightings. So we mentioned that earlier, but I just want to point out but that's one of two things. Either it's sort of stealth and it's sort of reflecting it off, or it's like literally absorbing the energy. That's what I'm assuming what that means. You send out a radio signal, it's supposed to bounce back and come back, and you see it as radar signature, but processing radio frequency sounds like it's kind of getting absorbed in some fashion, which we sort of mentioned the exotic propulsion that may be warping space-time. Maybe that's an explanation. If you're actually warping space and time, maybe the RF signals that you're sending out, don't always come back. Although, I will say that a lot of these signals are coming back. They did say that there's 144 reports, and then 80 of them are coming with multiple radar signatures. And so that means that 64 of them were maybe single sources, and then 80 of them have multiple sources. And so I think the ones that have multiple sources are going to be a little bit more credible. And then the last thing that I'd say, well, they did say that they found a balloon, that they were able to identify one UAP with high confidence, meaning it was just a mundane, large deflating balloon. And that the final point is that this little sentence, it says, additional rigorous analysis are necessary by multiple teams or groups of technical experts to determine the nature and validity of these data. So just to sort of interpret that a little bit, that, whenever you do an initial analysis, you like to have it go through some sort of peer review process. And so I think what that may be saying is that this is maybe a preliminary analysis. They even call it a preliminary assessment. And so, but to really kind of put it through its paces and have other people also cross-check it and make sure that they didn't miss anything. So it sounds like they, even though all these cases, they still need to have more analysis that's done. This is like a 6-month report. Elizondo has said that.
Yeah, no, he said that hundreds of times, that this is this was literally put together with fishing string and toilet paper. Like, I'm shocked, honestly, I am shocked at this point that we even got the review on time. This report was supposed to be delayed. It was supposed to be delayed with a preliminary report, which is actually kind of what I wanted. Could you imagine if we got this today with a promise as a preliminary report, with the promise of it going to another 180-day extension, and then the report that we get in 180 days would be even better? This is why we were advocating for an extension. Not that I'm not taking away anything from this report. It's still really fun. But I think it would have been an even bigger win if this was the preliminary report and then we got an extended report. I haven't heard from Alec in a while, and I know you've probably been digesting this report back and forth. So what do you, now that you've looked at it, I think you've, right? How many times have you read over it, Alec?
I've read through it 3 times now.
Okay.
And I happen to catch something new every time. I put a thread up about it. Writing things down helps me get my thoughts out more generally. Right. Just to kind of give my broad general overview, I agree with most everyone's points, was that we were underwhelmed about this coming into it, because expectations, for most people were low. For people that just kind of like, generally follow the UAP stuff, or either that or that are like the hardcore, like true believers, like the green men from Pleiades are here to save us. They're going to be disappointed by this, because it is, it's what we expected. It was 6 months. If it was 6 months, this is pretty good. It's pretty good.
I think it's pretty good for 6 months, and considering, like, again, the expectations that were being set were like some of these guys haven't even heard of the report. That's what I was hearing about a month out, that it hasn't even crossed some desks yet in some in different departments.
There is a portion of the report that lists every department and governmental institution that had a hand in creating this. And it's DIA, FBI, NSA, Air Force. I did find it interesting in that it's on the scope and assumptions on page 2. At the very, like, kind of tucked into the middle there is DARPA. So DARPA was consulted on this report, and DARPA came up and said, yeah, we don't have anything for this. I think the single biggest takeaway is, out of 144 incidents, they could only disprove one singular incident, and 80 of those incidents had multiple witnesses and sensor data. So I think that is a big admission. That's a big takeaway. And I think that I kind of think this is the military basically coming out and saying, like, yeah, we screwed up for, the past 20 years. Sorry, we'll try to do better, but we're going to need money. And that's the general tone of this. We're trying to play down the stigma thing now. We're working on it.
We need a bigger budget. ATIP is not a big enough budget. It's not. Like, a $22 million budget for 5 years is terrible.
That's the shoestring budget.
That's not even a shoestring. That's the plastic tip at the end of the shoestring.
Yeah, that's budget. Like, that's like a couple of people's salaries and, like, maybe some travel, and that's not a lot. That's not a lot for 5 years. And when we're talking about military spending, it's a drop in the bucket. It's kind of sad.
I could see in our private chat, Alex Rather's having an argument with our producer, Alex, and Alex hates this report. Hates the report, and Rather's like, nah, I like it.
Wait, why did he hate the report?
So he no, that's fine. I saw you talking. One of the things he wrote, potential national security challenges. We currently lack data to indicate any UAP are part of the foreign collection program or indicative of a major technological advancement by potential adversary. We continue to monitor for evidence of such programs given the counterintelligence challenge they would pose, particularly at some UAP have been detected near military facilities or by aircraft carriers, the USG most advanced sensor system. So he's just pissed that we didn't get any data.
Well,
we didn't get any data.
They're never going to give you data. Because from their standpoint, I think the data that they give you is collected to the way they got the data, if that makes sense. Like, the report is basically saying, okay, what is the data indicating? Basically, give me a summary of the data. It's basically that. And look, I'm not saying it's great. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overstep.
No. You didn't overstep. I'm laughing because for the first time ever, our producer wants to come on the show and give his, which is like, he never wants to put. He never wants to put his face on camera. No, he's setting up the camera.
This report was great. So if your producer wants to come on and have this conversation, let's the producer come on have the conversation.
We need a naysayer.
We definitely need a naysayer, because I think there's part of the audience that's not happy with the report. But I'm gonna say, and let's add him here to the stream. I'm gonna say just real quick, I think if you're mad at this report, your expectations were too high.
Yes, agreed.
So Alex, executive producer who's muted, You're muted. There you go. All right. What do you got?
I just think it's horrible. And I'll tell you this, because I think what you guys are missing within the report is that they dropped the ball for 20 years. And then this report, they're admitting it. It's like basically what they're saying is these things have been flying around military facilities. They were flying around our restricted airspace. They've been flying around all around the country. And we haven't done anything about it. And we didn't report it to Congress. We didn't report it publicly. So basically, we've been at the will of whatever this is, this phenomenon, for 20 years. I think that is the central, for me, the central issue behind this, is that the DOD is basically admitting that they dropped the ball. And I think Jamarl's right in saying this is apologetic for that precisely.
Let me ask you this. What was your expectation from this report? Because all I ever thought was this is going to destigmatize, potentially open Pandora's box. This was going to give us the ability to get the ball moving and start to actually collect data. What was your expectation from the report?
Well, my expectation, it wasn't necessarily that fantastical. I didn't think it was going to be all that revealing. I think they were going to keep the majority of it behind the veil of confidentiality. That's to me, it's clear. But what I'm saying, I think I was really mad at in the chat, is that nobody's picking up on the fact that the DOD basically put its head, or basically put its head on the chopping block.
Well, let me give you a rebuttal.
All these people have been putting us all in danger, right? And not telling us what this is, according to this threat narrative, by the way, just to point that out.
Well, real quick, I got a rebuttal for you. And this was an article that came out today in the debrief. And I think it's going to give you a really good picture as to why they've done nothing for 20 years and why they dropped the ball on this. So check this out. So today we had Ray, was it Ray, right? Ray Mabus, former Secretary of the Navy for 8 years. Okay? And he said, whatever these mysterious UAP objects were, they didn't seem to be posing any real threat or danger. In essence, the inexplicable nature of these events allowed them to easily be regulated to laughable realms of UFOs, saving time and energy on matters like China's advances in the South China Sea. He said, and this is from Tim McMillan, this article was written by Tim McMillan over at the Debrief, definitely go check it out. But he also said, we had Syria launching chemical weapons against its own people. We had the Horn of Africa absolutely on fire with Yemen and the civil war proxy. You had war with Iranian and the Saudis. Oh, and by the way, no shit, we were on, this is a quote, no shit, we were on the brink of nuclear war with North Korea. A former senior official in the Secretary of Defense office told me, explaining everything that is going on at this time, that they received several briefings related to UAP. He said, quote, I know that's a sad story. I know it's not the right story. It's not the right answer. I'm not proud of it, but it's the reality. It's the reality. They are inundated with people dying. Natural, like people are actually dying. And just real quick, let me also add that they also described the movements of these objects to be, and I can't find it right now, but basically saying they were absolutely no threat. In some cases, it even looked like they were playful with us. Like, so to devote all of this energy, time, it wasn't part of their mission, it wasn't part of the plan, and from a foreign policy aspect, it just didn't work.
It's also so big. Think how big it is. And by the way, Alex, I agree with your point. You're right. They dropped the ball in a radical fashion, right? I mean, these guys are supposed to be protecting this country, and you have something that is invading military installations, doing things, and they just looked at it and say, okay, that is so big that we can't even frame that. So let's just not deal with that. They came that. And so they just, but I would just make the point to you that what you want comes after, not first. What's primary, I would make the point is it a thing? Is it a there? I was just talking to my co-host. Because Shane is one of those people who's like, yeah, man, I don't know what it is, man. Maybe, it's interesting, it's weird. And he read the report and he was like, okay, that report is wild. Because that report basically says there's a deal there. And I was making a point to him, yes, it legitimizes and says this is a physical thing. This is real. Not just a physical thing, that this stuff is national security, whether we want to accept the framing of it or not. It's a national security thing, meaning it's something that requires our attention, our immediate attention. We need to require money and resources and studying to figure out what this is. And further,
Jamarl, wait.
I guess I'm making the point that that's first. After the fact, it's how did you fail us so miserably?
And we're going to get to this $10 chat donation question in a second after Alex's point here.
Yeah, just let me say that part is even a bigger ball of bullshit, by the way. I'm sorry for using that, but the narrative in the report saying that they need more money and resources, we already given them billions and billions of dollars a year for them to defend this country, and they're asking for more money. This is the worst part of it, I think.
I'm just talking about specifically not for the defense of the world or the country. I'm talking about for the specific project. That's all I mean. The report doesn't say we need more money and resources to dedicate to this. What they're saying is we need more money, right? We need more money to study this. But by the way, they have money that they use for black ops all the time that we don't know what they do with. So again, why are they asking publicly? Why are they asking Congress publicly that they need more money and resources? They already have tons of money and resources. We don't know Alex, I agree with you. Look, personally, if I'm being honest, I think all of this is being choreographed, personally.
Right.
I think all of this is being shepherded in a particular way to try to get the public to manage.
Well, hold on a second. Wait, one second, real quick, Alex.
Spend more money on paper and office supplies at the Pentagon than they would probably spend on the ATIP program. I'm
right, but here's the thing. Them asking for more money I don't think them asking for more money. The money's there. We all know that.
Right.
I think this is more, can we please study this?
Yes, thank you.
That's what this is. Can we please look at this? Because we don't need the money. The money's there, dude. We need somebody to say, okay, here's an allocated set of funds. Here's your team. Here's your resources. Here are your instruments. And by the way, you need to report to us publicly. This needs to be an open, transparent thing, but they need permission. That's what I took from that.
I gotta go with.
Think that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alec.
I kind of want to agree with Lou here, just specifically on the funding thing, because yes, we do give the military billions of dollars to operate already existing programs and military ventures. It takes congressional approval and sometimes executive approval to start an entirely new department. And that's, if we want UAP to be researched, categorized, and reported on, we want a full department staffed by people, and that takes more than $22 million, and that takes congressional oversight. That takes
the question is, can you reallocate budgets, right? Can you reallocate the budgets that you already have into all of these other dark programs? And the amount of money that's being spent on the military-industrial complex currently is absolutely insanity. So there's no reason that we can't reallocate budgets, and that would take congressional approval. But why can't we do that? We could easily. Congress can absolutely do that. And I don't understand this idea of people are saying that, well, this report is just sweeping this under the rug. I mean, if people take this report seriously and report on it seriously, there's absolutely no reason that this can't absolutely light a fire under Congress and light a fire into the mainstream media. Let's report on it as it is. Let's call it out for what it isn't. But the idea that it's just a nothing burger, I don't understand that. I don't understand that mindset.
No, I'm not. By the way, I'm not saying it's a nothing burger. I think there's a lot of jewels in this report, but I just think there's criminal negligence in the fact that they're already ignoring a lot of things that the public already knows. And by the way, did Project Blue Book take congressional approval? Did all those programs in the past take congressional approval? That's all I'm going to say.
Well, we have the UAPTF right now, and that didn't necessarily need congressional approval, but a bigger project does, and we want the bigger project, right? So it needs congressional.
Do we know the budget of Project Blue Book, though, Alec? Do we know those programs, how much they cost, and over how many years they were run? I mean, there's so much inside information that we don't have access to, that we don't know how to make. Again, those are assumptions. We don't know how much money they pumped into this.
Right, but here's the thing, though, dude, is that you're asking the current administration, the current apparatus, to start paying for the sins of their grandfathers. Like it's like all of these programs, all of this shit that happened in the past. At what point do we let it go and say, okay, this is the new information, this is the new direction. We got even though that's the lies and the the deceitfulness of the past is rampant. Right now, they're being honest. Right now, they're giving us all we can.
So, Lou, are you saying? Are you?
Hold on, wait. Jane's saying something.
You have to, Jane. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say the secrecy is still happening now. So here I have very mixed feelings about disclosure, and I've been doing disclosure hashtag, and I want to believe. But the reason why, and I'm sorry, I keep getting up. I'm in a different space, and I know I've been yelling in the mic. I'm sorry, everybody. I talk loud anyways. I have mixed feelings because the reason why I wanted to be part of the disclosure movement, so many years ago, is because I knew it was going to happen regardless, and the disclosure is going to be what we make of it. So I think we need to remember that alongside this unclassified report, they're telling us there's a classified report. They're continuing to tell us we're going to continue to lie about this. This is a national security concern that you're ultimately not. We're not going to show you all of our cards. And so I think it's good to be skeptical, and it's good to be disappointed about the report, but it's also good to read the report, continue to educate yourself. And if you're disappointed with the government, what they've disclosed, this is the government, probably some of the well-intentioned folks in the government. This is them giving you the green light. You can now show that UFO video to your mom or your grandmother and be like, look, they said that they're real. So go do it. Like, make this report work.
Yeah.
Work for a while. Yeah.
Real quick before anybody responds, we got some donations that I want to get to. The first was a $10 question from A0174, and he says, or she says, good report, but when do we think we'll hear confirmation or denial of metamaterials that these have been around for 70 years, etc.? What's the next step? Mellon promotes movies like The Phenomenon is real. So there's a couple of things going on there. I think we're going to address what's the next step in a few minutes. But I mean, what do you guys think? I think we're a long ways away from metamaterials. At least coming from this part, maybe in the next year or two, we might start having those discussions. But I think the goal right now is to get the majority of the United States on the same page. The terra firma that we always talk about on this show, the facts. There's objects in the sky. They're real. They've been chased by pilots, senators, DOD, Navy. Everyone's confirmed that they're real. They're there. What they are past that, who knows? Nobody knows. Because, first of all, we can't follow them. We don't know where they go back to. It's a very tough question to answer. But that's the reality. And that's what this report is doing. It's telling the masses, it's like Jane said, giving us the permission now to say this is real. This is real. There is a there, as Jamarl likes to say.
Yeah, no more Men in Black visits, no more being threatened if you've seen something. So remember, even though they've been lying about this and keeping all this information from us, the UFOs have been making themselves known to all of us average citizens who have no top secret clearance whatsoever. So you can see a UFO any day. You can have an opinion about it. You can take a video of it. You can do your own scientific analysis of it. So no government report or Men in Black is getting in the way of that.
That's right. We have to remember who this report.
Wait, Alec. Let's go with Alec, then we'll go to Alex. And real quick, just Jean-Francois Cherableu. Thank you for the $69.99 Canadian donation. And then we've also got Now I Become Death with $100 donation. You guys are killing it with the super chats. You guys are helping us produce this show 5 days a week. So thank you so damn much for all of these things. I mean, if it wasn't for these super chats and for our Patreon, I wouldn't have been able to upgrade the StreamYard to, high definition 1080p, even though Alec looks a little fuzzy, but I think that's his camera. That's me. That's definitely not the software
it's
I upgraded
It's on me, man.
So Alec, what's your response to that?
Yeah, I just, I think we have to remember who this report is for, right? It's not for us.
Right.
It's not for us. It's not for, us and the 1,200 people that are watching right now. It's not for UF Twitter. This report is for Congress and it's for government entities. It's not going to include, the breaking ground, earth-shattering photo that we want to come out. It's not going to include all of the reports of Foo Fighters in World War II, because as ufologists, we've just been studying this for so long. We know so many incidents, but this report is for the uninitiated. It's for just government use. For, hey, it's okay to talk about this now.
It's for the media
stuff. It's for media a little bit, yeah. It's for people who don't really know much about this, and that includes, unfortunately, a lot of senators and congressmen.
Well, that includes 99.9% of this country. Like, I know, like, Tim F is, I think he is pissed. He like, this report is not what he wanted. And he said somewhere, I lost the comment, somewhere around here, they're real for the last 3 years. Here it is. It's been 3 years of it's real. There is a there. We were told by our government, yes, these things are real for years now. Again, it really hasn't been 3 years of this, because remember, they keep, especially when it comes to Lou Elizondo, like, it took us 3 years just to confirm, 4 years, excuse me, 4 years to confirm that Lou Elizondo was 100% part of ATIP.
When the
first
Pentagon
he was, then he wasn't, then he wasn't, then he was, then he this, and then that, and it's just back and forth, until finally Senator Harry Reid was like, enough's enough. Here's the letter. Here's the proof. Why are we still having this conversation? But that's the way this kind of information is going to be checked, double checked, and talked about. So right now, I think for the next at least year, that's going to be the front and center message. These things are real. They're real. They're in the sky. Now what?
We just heard in 2020 from the Pentagon that the 3 leaked videos that were reported on in 2017 by the New York Times were legitimate. Like, this happened last year and nobody even paid attention.
Right.
I just want to say one thing on the metamaterials question before I lose that thread.
Yeah.
So I know Jacques Vallée and Gary Nolan have their own independent analysis that they're doing sort of outside of the government. And last I heard from the Scientific Coalition of UAP Studies, just people talking about it. And I think also Jacques Vallée said on one of the videos that it's up for peer review, meaning that it's going to be coming out sometime in the summer. They're not going to pre-announce the results. They're going to wait until it's been vetted by the scientific community, and they're going to make the announcement. Now, either those metamaterials have isotope ratios that are exotic, meaning that they're definitely not from the Earth, meaning that right now we don't have the technology to kind of mess with the isotope ratios of metals. So if that is different than what we expect, then that indicates that it's likely not from Earth. Now, if it is from Earth, isotope ratios, then you have the second issue, which is that it's a sort of nano engineering at a specific level that goes above and beyond any technology that we know is humanly possible. So if it is from Earth, it doesn't sort of eliminate the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis, or that it was made here on Earth or by a foreign adversary, that they've maybe made the sort of a quantum leap of technology. But it would also kind of raise larger questions if it's like a sort of a manufacturing process that goes above and beyond that. So that's a little bit of a wait and see. And I know that there's been a CRADA from the U.S. Army that from the Two Stars Academy had got some metamaterials that were acquired through various different sources, including Lyndon Moulton Howe. So that's also under process, but there's no obligation for them to kind of report their scientific studies of that. Even if they determine something, we may never hear about that. So yeah, I think that the other thing I just point out is that with the Inspector General report, you notice all the different people that are listed on the ways in which that you have to have like a GS-15 representative from each of these different entities, including like the NRO and National Reconnaissance Office. And, there's basically a lot of the people that you would expect to have lots of data is having the Defense Department go after and say, let's try to actually get all of what's out there, because I think there's a bit of a stovepiping that's been happening. So that may be one aspect. But even if they do get the data, I think we're back to this point where even if they were to release videos, then you would have people like Nick West trying to debunk them when there may be a lot of additional context of information that is associated to that that they're not releasing. So, I would love to see a lot of this information to be like, yep, I fully believe.
Shouldn't we have some data? I mean, if you're going to say UFOs are a threat, this is national security, this is super big, you just take our word for it. There were 11 near-miss planes. A plane UFO, I probably don't. How could we have to just trust that those reports of the 11 planes that almost, crashed into a UFO, that really happened, right? We're not seeing any data. We're not seeing any cases, any, footage in this. So to those who are like disappointed in the chat, I think that's probably where that's coming from. a little bit, but will we see things though, like with leak out over this next year? And when it leaks out, it's going to have so much more weight. Even a story like alien life being on Venus, or a moon of Jupiter or something like that. All of those stories we've also been hearing for years, like water on Mars. There's water on Mars. Oh, by the way, did we tell you there's water on Mars? Oh, guess what? There was water on Mars a long time ago. And it's on and on. It's the same stories over and over again, like for decades. Now, though, they have weight.
Here it is, Jane. I think there's a big problem in this as well. I think what people are missing is not only do we know by FOIA requests that these things have been seen throughout, I don't know how long. And I'm sorry to beat on a dead horse here, but the big problem is that these things are being seen. Nothing was done about it, according to them. They've only had a certain amount of reports compiled, and I'm sorry, I do believe like in UFO reparations, right? UFO reparations meaning they have done things in the past, right? to hide the truth and ruin people's lives, their reputations, their credibility, even drove people to insanity with operations that they performed on people. I mean, the bigger context that, for example, we know and some people that are watching the show know about is that this has been going on for such a long time, and they're basically just watching the table and saying, okay, we're going to start anew, forget about all that stuff that's happened in the past, and we're going to start anew with this idea that supposedly they're not a threat. But again, they are a threat because they have been turning off nuclear weapons. And they've been turning them on. So this is the insanity that I don't understand about this report. It's basically distorting reality, in my point of view.
Alex, you would get your pound of flesh. You would get your pound of flesh.
Thank you.
However, and I appreciate everybody who is like, oh, I didn't get this and I didn't get that. Oh, you're so bourgeois. The things that you guys wanted. Oh, the luxuries. When I used to walk in the snow 20 miles in order to get to school. In order to,
without any shoes.
I'm telling you, I was in the wilderness. Maybe it's my age. Maybe my age is showing on this. I just remember it's this being relegated to the point of ridicule. And this report, I get that people saying, okay, there were FOIA requests. Okay, yeah, but nobody pays attention to the FOIA requests outside of the UFO community. This is the government in a document, ironclad, saying there's a there, period, full stop, drop the mic, walk out. And everything that extends, meaning consequences that extends from that. The consequences being you need to have an investigation. Now, if you're the UFO community and you say, all right, I think these things are alien. However, I can't say that. I'm not going to say that. What I will say is I want an investigation because I believe my hypothesis of this will be proven true within the context of an investigation. But however, that can only be found through a congressional investigation, meaning your pound of flesh can't even be established until the government establishes this is real.
Right.
It just did that.
Right.
There are consequences that extend from that. I mean, think back to Germany for the moment. The reparations, for example. Think back to Germany. After Germany lost that war and the Nazis were crushed, how many years did it take for the society to reconcile the fact that there were Nazis in their society? What, 10 years, a decade, maybe more?
More like 15, 20 years.
Right.
Yeah. So, you have this secrecy, the truth embargo, as Stephen Bassett calls it, for 50, 60, 70 years that these guys knew, ruin lives, put out information that was wrong in order to discredit and make people look bad, all that stuff. And now it's like, all right, this stuff is being unraveling. And you're like, I want my pound of flesh. And it's like, I get it. You got to get your blood and flesh. But let's establish first that there's a there. Let's get that. Let's get the consequences that extends beyond it. And by the way, I mean, I don't want these guys to walk without there being at the very least some acknowledgement of, whoa, that's a big deal that you guys didn't seem to pay attention to that or didn't seem to care about that. That has to be a story at some point.
At some point. But that's not. But today's not that day.
I just don't feel like today's that day.
Yeah, no, today's not that day. And look, man, if you're going to be asking for reparations on this, there's a segment of society that was promised 40 acres and a mule that has not seen a lick of that. And I would say they were more terrorized and more ostracized than anybody ever on the history of the planet. Like, so I'm just saying, dude, like you want your pound of flesh. I think you're lucky if you get a few slices of ham at the deli of flesh. like you're not going to get it. You're not going to get reparations on this because again, this is
it's not. I think it's truth and reconciliation. It's not reparations.
There you go. It's
different.
Correct.
It's reparations implies money. Truth and reconciliation means that you account for the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And there's different, and it's different.
And even that might be limited.
I would say, look at Appendix B. If you look at Appendix B, it says what the Senate report was asking them to do, and nowhere in there do they say conduct a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So your desire for that is not part of the remit for what this is. I understand that there's this catharsis that we need to have, which is that the government comes out and says, yeah, this is real and we're sorry that we've been covering it up. I think we're at the phase, at least acknowledging the reality of this. Now there's like this, pulling back of this thread, which is like, how much does this, when do they know and when do they know, what do they know and when do they know it type of these types of questions. Like how long was this a reality that, are these control groups or whatever else that we have within the UFO community in terms of what the story is, like Richard Dolan says that a lot of the reporting on this has been siphoning out the history of this. And I think that largely that's true, especially when you look at the mainstream coverage. It's almost like the modern resurgence of UFOs started in 2004 with Nimitz and that nothing really happened before that. So I think there is this lack of truth and reconciliation when it comes to the history of this as a topic. And I think we're at that, like I talked about the paradigm shifts at the top here. And I think it gets back to that, which is that once you acknowledge that something is real, then there's like this going back of like, oh, wow. Okay.
Right.
Now that we see that this is real, now let's go back, look in the past and the Cassandras who were trying to warn us, but we weren't listening to them.
Right.
And what's the new standards of evidence that we have now that this is a part of our new paradigm and we accept this as a reality, then what else do we look back in the past? I think that's such a huge like rabbit hole of
UFO Museum, where we have Betty and Barney Hill, the Cash Landrum case. They sued the government in Texas. There was a craft. They had radiation sickness. They thought the government were aware of these craft. They sued. It was all thrown out. They didn't get their medical bills paid for. Who has died because of this phenomenon? Who's been threatened to? Who eventually? I mean, yes, this will lead to Roswell eventually. It's gonna be a long time before it gets there. It will lead to conversations about abductions. It will lead to these dark places, and there's going to need to be a give and take with the public, trying to understand and providing some forgiveness for some of this. Trying to put yourself in the shoes of a military member. You wouldn't have probably been a whistleblower either. You probably would have done the same thing. So I think it's going to be a give and take, but that's going to be a really long process. But I do think that it has started.
Well, don't forget, we're also going to be seeing leaks from this report, right? So this is not going to be wrapped up in a cool little bundle. We're going to start seeing things that are going to get leaked to the press. I'm going to be refreshing Alex Sears on Twitter like every 5 minutes. This is reality now. And so the fact that we have the declassified report, and it is what it is, and everybody's pissed off about it. But the reality is, we've got another 70 pages of another report.
Not everybody's pissed off about it. I'd say I think most people in this panel are pretty damn happy with it.
I love it.
I love it.
Ecstatic.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, Jamarl.
Talking to Shane.
Dan, we should have gotten Shane on here. If Shane wants to join this conversation, because I know Shane's a very smart dude, I would love to have him on.
Yeah,
and let you guys jam live here on the show, because I think that'd be interesting. But real quick, we've got a $50 donation from Mary Desario, and he's got a question or a statement with it. He says the UAPTF holds a small amount of data that appear to show UAP demonstrating acceleration or degree of signature management. I'm assuming he pulled this quote from the report.
Well, I'll just read it.
Yeah.
The report's right here.
Yeah.
Go for it.
It says, in 18 incidents and described in 21 reports, observers observed unusual UAP movement patterns or flight characteristics Some UAP appear to remain stationary, winds aloft, moved against the wind, maneuver abruptly, or move at considerable speed without discernible means of propulsion. In a small number of cases, military aircraft systems process radio frequency energy associated with UAP sightings. The UAP task force holds a small amount of data that appears to show UAP demonstrating an acceleration or a degree of signature management. Additional rigorous analysis are necessary by multiple teams or groups of technical experts to determine the nature and validity of these data. We're conducting further analysis to determine if breakthrough technologies were demonstrated. I mean, the report is screaming for help. Screaming for
help.
I just want to comment.
What it's saying real quick is that some of them don't display that what is it, signature, and some do. That's what it's saying, right? Some do, some don't. We need to help to figure out what they are, basically. But to go back, I'm not necessarily unhappy with the report. I'm going to say there's a lot of gems in there. I do think that the biggest thing and the most important part of this is what it will lead to, which is congressional hearings. That is the most important thing. That is the most important thing.
Yeah, I just want to comment on this because I think they actually may have missed a word because it says demonstrating acceleration. I think they may mean like anomalous acceleration or like extreme acceleration or like unexpected, but it's accelerating. So it sounds like that.
What page is that?
It's page 5 that we just
read. Page 5.
Yeah.
At the bottom. Yeah.
The UAPTF holds a small amount of data that appear to show UAP demonstrating acceleration or degree of signature management. I think they mean like anomalous acceleration.
Right.
And I think that what they
typo.
To kind of extrapolate on that a little bit is that, they said that there was 11 reports that had like near miss, meaning that they almost crashed into it, right? So that's meaning that the pilot saw it. They had like eyes on the target. I think a lot of these targets, if you read through the report that the second part of Tim McMillan's report, where I think it's Ryan Graves was talking about how a lot of these were kind of flying around, but they couldn't see them. They were just picking them up on radar, and they had just swapped out the radar to be actively the EASA, the active electronic array of scanned. It's basically, rather than having the radar that sort of goes like this, it's basically an array that shoots out the beams and is able to get these different returns. And so there's always that question as to whether or not what you're seeing is an actual thing or not. And so the fact that there are some with multiple returns means that there's more likely that it's an actual thing there rather than some sort of anomalous sensor. So I think that when they talk about this, demonstrating sort of, I'm going to assume they mean anomalous acceleration, it could always be that there's something wrong with the radar and it kind of trips out. And it's just more of a sensor limitation rather than something that's actually moving. But if you have multiple eyes on that target and it's demonstrating that, then you're like, oh, wow, they're able to actually kind of go and do this instantaneous acceleration, which is one of the 5 observables that the ATIP has talked about.
Great point.
One of my predictions came true about the report. There's a typo in it. Apparently the report was finished last night, or it was finished last night. So I got like all like college, essay writing, like anxiety over it. I have so much stress for the people. I feel so much stress for the people who had to put this together. For the
one person responsible for that actually got funded to write this report.
You know what probably happened with this? They were probably going back and forth on like what word specifically to use. Like, so because they want to be as as specific and not misleading as possible. So what probably happened is they never decided on a word to describe the type of acceleration, and then they just sent it because they forgot to fix it.
They forgot to fix it,
or they just intentionally left it out just because it was any word you pop in there would have been like, whoa.
Well, even anomalous would have been fine. Anomalous would have been fine because it would have given them an out, because then they can say that they don't know, or there are so many outs that they could give themselves with using a word like anomalous that they wouldn't have to worry about it.
Or instantaneous acceleration, I think, is probably what they were talking about. Most of what I do, my day job, is to cover VR and cover kind of the phenomenological experiences. And I just want to speak to my own phenomenological experience of this report, where there's a lot of anticipation. And it's almost like, you're waiting for Christmas, and you kind of like, there's a part of me that was like, will we see like evidence that is going to be irrefutable evidence that the government's standing behind, that's going to allow us to be like, yes, this is like an actual real thing. I mean, for some people, they already have that will to believe, and they already are at that point. But to have the government kind of stand behind it, we've seen in the past where, and as I've been tracking this story, the things that go super viral are like, here's some footage. It's really weird. We think it might be, not U.S. stuff. It's sort of anomalous. We can't identify it. And the government says, yes, this is unidentified. And then they release the video and it goes viral around the world. This is not that. This is not like new experiential video or evidence that is like undeniable. It's basically like, we have a lot of statistical reports. We have a lot of data. We're not going to show you. It's all classified, but it's a real deal. And so as someone who's looking at a report like this, it's sort of like you want to see something and be like, oh yeah, definitely, this is totally a thing now. And here's some evidence that's irrefutable. Like you want to see something that's like doing like a 90-degree turn or something like that, right? You want to see like everything we've seen so far is still a little bit like, unless you're a subject matter expert, you don't really have the expertise to know like, oh yeah, that's definitely not a jet. We're not like FLIR experts. We're not, fighter pilots that are able to identify these things. And so everything that's been released so far is still kind of like fuzzy or hazy, but there's this kind of like, we want to see that triangle UFO emerging out of the ocean and shooting out in space. Something that'd be like, if we saw that and there was evidence that was recorded by the military and has proper provenance and additional radar return to verify it, then you'd be like, yeah, there's something going on here. And that, I think there was a possibility for something like that to happen, and that certainly did not happen. But we don't know. We'll see what if someone did see that type of footage. I know that Rubio was saying if you sort of have something really spicy, then there may be an incentive to sort of put it out to the people. But I think this is it's like an incremental step, and I think it's going to prove it to the larger journalism community, academic community, scientific community. So it's enough them saying, we have enough evidence to say this is a real phenomenon, but we're not going to show you any of the actual data to be able to make that judgment for yourself.
Well, I would just make one real quick point. I'm sorry, in like 30 seconds. I would argue this is more important and more significant than a ship coming out of the water doing a right-wing triangle. You can look on YouTube and you can actually find that. There's this awesome thing where it looks like comes out the water. There's a fisherman. The fisherman's freaked out. Navy ship's flying behind it.
Oh, that's a film. That's a Russian film.
It's, like, right? It's this notion that the government comes out. It's almost like your money. Why does your money have value? Well, the government stands behind the fact that your money has value. It's the fact that the government is standing behind it saying this is real. It's that. I would argue that's more valuable on some level. I mean, tell me if you guys disagree. Like it's this substantiation of reality in this kind of weird, strange way the government is able to do such a thing. Yeah. It's very weird, heady.
No, I agree. I agree with you. Real quick, let's. I'm going to put Alex has got to get out of here, so we're going to put Alex up to say goodbye. Thank you for being our executive producer.
He's got a final point. Let him hit his final point.
No. I've had my say. Thank you, guys. You will never see me on camera again. I love you guys, and I love the show. Thank you for everything you do.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thank you for everything you do. Wait till we see the merch. Wait till you see the merch. Wait till you see the merch. Okay, so real quick, also, I'm gonna say goodbye to Mr. Alex Sears. You've got the floor if you want to give us your last thoughts on the report, and then we'll let you go.
Yeah. Last thoughts. I just give me the hearings. That's what I want.
Give me the hearings. I love it.
Just to echo what Marco Rubio said, this was a good first step.
Yeah. So, that's we're going to be going for an extra half hour today, and that's what we're going to be talking about in the last half hour. What's the next step? What do we want to see? Where do we think is going to happen next? I think it's a fascinating discussion, and we're going to have you back for it soon, Alec. Thank you so much for everything you helped us get through today. Thank you for your analysis and your quick reading skills.
Thanks for having me, guys. Great show. Take care.
Yep. Thanks, brother. Let's see. All right, cool. And then, of course, our pontificator, our one of my favorite political voices on the planet, Mr.
Our
Jamarl
filibuster
Thomas.
in chief.
Filibuster in chief. I know you've got some wife duties here at 6:00, so I want to go ahead and give you the floor. Give us a pontification. Lead us out on something beautiful and positive, as I know you're going to do.
Look, I would say this was never. Think of this issue not over the context of 5 years. Think of it over the context of 80. If you want to go back to Roswell, think of it back to Roswell. And think of it in the sense of swamp gas, conspiracy theorists, disinformation, destroy that guy, ruin that guy. And then all of a sudden, okay, this was real. You guys were right. That's what you got. You got confirmation. When Grant Cameron said this a while ago, he says, you're not going to get disclosure. You're going to get confirmation. Well, Grant Cameron was right. And that's what you got. And I look at this and I think that's exactly what I expected. And it's more than I expected because the report is screaming for further assistance in study. This is a good step. I don't know what other people have expected on this, but this is more than what I expected. I expected less. And so the fact that this report is basically screaming for hearings, screaming for more information, screaming for data, I'm very curious about what the scientific community does after this. At this point, this is reality, period. That's what I'm going to end it with. So thank you guys. I really do appreciate you guys bringing me on, man. I always enjoy these conversations.
Yeah, I know you do. And I love, again, you're a filibuster king, dude. We love your thoughts and expertise that you bring to the table, dude. So get to that wife of yours. We'll see you very soon, I'm sure.
Thanks, Jamarl.
Thanks, Jamarl.